Okay, well, good evening, everybody. My name is Elise Martyr. I am chair of the Neighborhood Advisory Committee, and I'd like to welcome you to the September 22nd, 2025 meeting. The committee consists of 9 members, all appointed by City Council, with representation from specific community sectors. Members shall be residents of the city or the city's extraterritorial zoning jurisdiction and shall reflect the socioeconomic diversity of Asheville. The term of office is 3 years. The committee was established to advise the City Council on neighborhoods within the City of Asheville's zoning and planning jurisdiction. The committee shall have the following powers and duties: develop rules and bylaws for the conduct of its business, including but not limited to meeting schedules, officers, voting, and subcommittees. Develop a plan to strengthen neighborhood identity and resilience and to facilitate communication and cooperation between Asheville's neighborhoods and city offices. Develop benchmarks and standards by which progress towards implementing the plan can be measured, and work on special projects that are consistent with the goals of the committee as assigned or directed by the City Council. All of our committee members and staff are participating in person, and members of the public are welcome to attend our meetings, which typically happen in the first floor conference room of City Hall. We are in the 6th floor HR training room today due to some utilities issues in the first floor conference room. And we are streaming live. We are not streaming live right now due to also some technical difficulties. But you can watch the meeting recording later on YouTube or at the Virtual Engagement Hub, which is accessible through the Virtual Engagement Hub link on the front page of the city website, and also linked on the committee webpage. And we also have an option for the public to listen live by phone by dialing 855-925-2801 and entering meeting code 9247. I will now invite the committee members to introduce themselves. Please say your name and the zip code or area you represent.
I'm Elizabeth Likas. I am vice chair and at-large member, and I reside in 28803.
And as I said before, my name is Elise Martyr. I'm also an at-large representative and currently serving as chair, and I live in 28806. Hi.
I am Moira Belange, and I reside and represent 28806, and I also represent 28728.
Hello, I'm Trevor Schmidt, and I reside in 28803, represent 28803 and 28704.
Charles Crowell. I live in and represent 28801.
Awesome. Thank you. And our city staff members?
My name is Trey Irby. I'm the Neighborhood Services Specialist.
And excuse me, I'm Dara Hitch, and I serve as the Communication and Public Engagement Director for the city, and our department supports the Neighborhood Advisory Committee as your staff liaison.
And I'm Christina Israel, and I serve as the CAPE Manager, Communication and Public Engagement.
Awesome. Thank you, everyone, for being here. Let me find my other notes here. Bear with me. I'm still figuring out how to work my tablet. All right. Well, oh, there it is. There it is. Okay. Well, I did want to share as we start our introductions and everything that we are meeting practically 1 year to the day from our last meeting. We last met on September 23rd of 2024, and today is September 22nd, 2025. And certainly our community has faced just unimaginable challenges since our last meeting, but I'm really glad to be back and glad that everyone here, is committed to continuing their work with NAC. So thank you all for being here. The first thing we need to do is review the agenda for today. And is there a motion to approve the agenda?
I motion to approve.
Thank you.
Second.
Elizabeth second. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay. And is there a motion to approve the minutes from our meeting a year ago?
I motion to approve.
Thank you, Moira.
Second.
Trevor, thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, awesome. Got the business out of the way.
Can I ask a clarifying question on quorum? Everyone who's on the committee is here, but there's supposed to be 9. We're at quorum because all 5 appointees are here, right?
Yes, quorum is based on the number of seats that are currently filled. But yes, you're right. We have 4 vacancies right now. Are there any public comment?
We didn't receive any public comment for the meeting.
Thank you. I guess I do want to add here that our council liaison, Councilmember Roney, she did let me know that her teaching schedule has changed this year, and so she teaches now until 7 p.m. So it's unlikely that she'll be able to attend any of our meetings. But certainly she watches the recordings afterwards, and I let her know that if she sends any comments, I'll be sure to share them at this part of the meeting. I did not receive anything from her for this meeting. Okay, so moving right along, I wanted to just create a little bit of space if folks want to share any reflections or observations from Helene. Now, certainly I do want to recognize that some people, really face some real hardships during that time, and maybe they don't have like the mental capacity to do that right now, especially on the verge of the anniversary and everything. So I first want to ask, is everyone okay with doing that? Okay. And if anyone's watching this later and that's not something that you want to listen to, please feel free to jump forward 10 or 15 minutes and protect your mental health. I guess I'll just start by saying that it's been quite a year since then. It was, something that was totally unpredictable, unimaginable, unfathomable. No one had any, at least no one that I knew, had any idea that something like that was coming. I think we're pretty used to getting a little bit of flooding periodically with the heavy rains, but it was just unimaginable. And I'm very grateful for all the city staff, and as well as like the neighborhood leaders out there. I know you guys were like 24/7 trying to just get the word out there when there was no way to communicate with anybody, which was, aside from the water, I think not having the communications was one of the worst things, just not being able to get the information out. So thank you so much, Tawa and Christina and Trey, for all your work and the rest of your staff's work, just trying to deal with that obstacle.
Thank you for that.
And I think the storm just really reminded us of how fragile our infrastructure and our economy really is, and the importance of those neighborhood connections, because without that ability to communicate more broadly, our area of focus just became hyper localized into those people who were just right around us. Those neighborhood hubs became really critical. So I hope that we can carry those lessons forward and strengthen neighborhood resilience in the wake of this disaster and tragedy.
I want to piggyback on some of that because I know that Elise, you and I got a chance to go at least once to one of the, I forgot what they called it, but all the chairs and vice chairs could come together and give input. There was a consultant and talking about the progress and what the needs were, and that type of thing. So we got to hear and share a lot about how neighborhoods came together and how the city staff was working 24/7, and how grateful we were for the immediacy of the water and the food and the communications. And very specifically in this committee, I remember someone said, okay, we need to do a roll call. We need to do a check-in. How is everyone and how important that was in the moment. And I think not only on a personal level, living on the Biltmore Village end of Oakley, where we watched things being carried away for hours, definitely left a mark. And then in my professional work as a therapist, I think part of that is I'm hearing about it every day. And that stopped after about 6 months, and then it has started picking back up in the last 2 months. And so I think people are at a very different place. What I hear from neighborhood associations and from just neighbors in general is that whatever reserves people had stored up to get through the first 6 months have been depleted, and now people are at a really different place. We're seeing that in lots of areas around town and programming. So I'm really glad that we were able to have a meeting and touch base and sort of figure out, where do we go from here? How do we help? What is this new structure, and how do we continue to be a liaison to our neighborhood associations? I will say in the neighborhood that I live in, a huge resurgence in our neighborhood leadership. I mean, it has exploded. We have like all these new people that have come in that said we want to be involved, that most of them had not been involved before. So that is a big benefit.
I'm happy to go.
No pressure.
So, first of all, to reiterate your point, Elise, I was very nonchalant about the potential going in, and I was lucky enough to have a wife who was more conscientious of that, and so and also we were very fortunate that where our house is didn't flood. You know, we had some trees down in the neighborhood. You know, some people did have some damage, but our neighborhood in North Asheville was relatively unscathed. So we missed. So I'll say this with the most humility I can, is we missed a lot of what the really, really bad hit. And so I feel very, I think about those folks and try to help out where I can, and try to help out. I've sent some emails. I tried to get involved, and it was involved in my neighborhood on the ground. But I will say, what in a weird way, just to make a positive spin on it, and again, don't want to cheapen. I know a lot of people were really, really struggling, but that 72 hours of just getting to know the neighborhood, not having other people outside, was kind of a nice thing in a way, in a strange way, right? Got to listen to BPR and hear the updates from the city, but it was just it was really amazing to me how well, at least our neighborhood, and I heard this story in many other neighborhoods, and Elizabeth, you just shared yours, came together and helped each other out, during that period. For instance, my neighbor, his basement flooded, and he started pumping, he had some pump, we started pumping the water out. I said, well, hold on, let's fill this into trash cans so people could flush their toilets. So literally we had, these massive trash cans out in front of my neighbor's house for two weeks, I guess it was 17 days, where my house specifically didn't have potable water. I don't know or didn't have potable water for 51 days, but 17 days that we didn't have any water, right? Which, again, huge work by the city to get that done. So very, the city came together. Y'all were just amazing. But long story short, for 17 days, people would show up with 5-gallon buckets, getting buckets of water to flush their toilet out of my neighbor's basement. So, in a weird way, thank goodness his basement flooded. There's a lot of water can get into a basement because it held on for a while. So that was a really cool, just one anecdote of like the neighbors coming together. I got to meet a bunch of neighbors that I never would have met. So that was a really neat thing. And then just fast forward, just another thing that I did in March. Jeremy Brooks sent out the thing for the Citizen Fire Academy. I did that this spring, which is really cool. I would recommend it. It's really fun. You have to drive a fire truck and, amongst other things. Seriously, they take Jeremy took the picture and he never sent it to me. I have to get him to send it to me. But long story short, Kelly Hines, who came to a number of our meetings, she leads that, and Jeremy does that for her. And the last meeting, we had a lot of our meetings in building 13 or in station 13, which you guys spend a lot of time in, I know. And like, for instance, Aquaman Yeah, the picture of
Ben.
of Ben Woody as Aquaman on the back wall, trying to get the water going. Like, just again, I wasn't there for any of these meetings, but these things, like, clearly a group of people got together for 2 months, 3 months, and like fought a fire every day. And I can't imagine how hard it was on you guys. So I'm just so proud that the city has such great leaders that came together to help keep us safe. And just the story, I think his Chief Knightley, is it Chief Knightley? Knighton, I'm sorry. He told the story of all the things that went on that first 72 hours and beyond. And it was just mind boggling. And I don't know when we'll get a chance to meet again, but I'd love to hear, if y'all haven't heard him tell this, it's amazing. And like the fact that the dam held, things like this, just kind of harrowing things to hear about, which is just the work that the city did 5, 6, 7 years before kept us all safe and helped us get back on the ground. So I'm just really proud to watch what people did. I think the community just came together, and it could have gone the complete opposite way. It could have, but I don't think it did, because the city was so thoughtful and did so many things in advance and cared so much about doing the right things for the citizenry. So anyway, I kind of went on, but I was just, I don't feel like I did much, but I got to see so many people do good things, and kind of motivates me to try to do more going forward.
Yeah, what we were talking about, it being unpredictable. I mean, I am a native Floridian, so I'm very used to hurricanes, and I did not, I have a whole checklist that I follow, and I'm very prepared. And like for this one, I didn't think it was going to be one of those. And I've lived through like a bunch of them where we didn't have power for 2 weeks and all things like that. And I just, after it hit, I was kicking myself, because it was, I know what I'm supposed to do. I didn't do any of it because I didn't think that it was going to be the level that I was used to. I didn't even get any cash from the bank, which is like the first thing that I do. So in terms of, I don't know if that it means anything, but even, again, like for me, it was, for a while, it was pretty much like I had a routine down, like every time we had like a hurricane coming. And I didn't do any of those things. I didn't even have ramen at the house. So, which is a big deal, because usually we'll just get a bunch of ramen and we could just cook that. So, one thing that during the hurricane that I don't know if anybody really had a chance to see firsthand. So my husband's a physician, and he's over at Hayward Regional. And he just happened to be on call that weekend that the hurricane hit. And it is actually, I wouldn't say scary, but, obviously they depend a lot on cell phone communications to be able to call people in and figure out how to coordinate staff. And obviously you can reach anybody. And so a bunch of the hospital workers had actually stayed at the hospital overnight, which was huge, because they would not have had enough staff there to kind of continue to run the hospital, whether or not they could reach the on-call staff, or if they could even get there, right? We had no idea where anybody was. So we ended up having to drive back and forth over to Waynesville, because he had to go in and see, kind of assess the situation. And it's, and even something like a hospital, they were, they had to wait a little bit, because they ended up running short on a lot of stuff, even like blood transfusions and things like that. And so they had to kind of, because they didn't know when the next, I don't even know if they bring them in on trucks or something like that. They didn't know when the next kind of relief was going to happen. And so they kind of just had to act, every day was kind of like a triage, like what was the most, urgent thing that they had to do. And they didn't have enough staff to do some of the stuff. And so some of the admin people were scrubbing in for the cases that were really urgent, which I thought was interesting. And I just feel like that's not really something you think about during that type of situation. But of course, I know Mission obviously had issues because they didn't have running water. So they ended up having to send a lot of their patients over to the smaller area hospitals around the city. And so you don't really think about the way that a disaster like that impacts the people that are already needing medical care and are super vulnerable. So I thought that was interesting. And then to kind of add to everybody's point, one thing I was very impressed about is obviously just not just the organized way of, I guess, the official way to help people, but all the kind of unofficial, I guess, I wouldn't say advanced, but all the ways that people unofficially organized everything and got stuff out. So it was like every area had kind of like a makeshift way that you could get supplies and water and food, even if it wasn't something that was like officially sanctioned. And to be able to do that on communication, like you were saying, was hard to accomplish, I thought was very impressive. And I had a couple of friends and I would try to help out passing out all the hot food and stuff, which, by the way, I don't know if you guys had a chance to see or work with World Central Kitchen during that. That is an incredible operation. I was very impressed. I mean, how quickly they got here, how quickly they got set up. And it was like ran like a machine. And they were like never running out of food. I mean, and they didn't even ask any questions. You came in and you told them, I need 60 meals at this time every day for the next 3 weeks, no questions asked. And then you just come pick it up and you'd have it. So I thought that was really impressive. And I'd heard of the organization before, obviously, but I'd never seen them in action. So very, very impressive organization. And I came away with a lot of admiration for the people that run that nonprofit, for sure. But yeah, just the way that people kind of, their instinct to help and be community oriented, the way that kicked in. It's not something that you really think about, but it was nice to see it during, not just during that weekend, but in the months after. Even after, like, I think, for a while my friends were like, oh, how can we help? And it was, for like 2 or 3 weeks. And then all of that kind of died down. But here we were still very much in it. So just some observations I had experiencing it.
Yeah. I mean, and to follow up on what everyone has said is the feeling of community right after the storm is something that I will never forget. I will, to my dying breath, remember the community coming together in such a, we didn't even know what it was at the time. We just saw flood. We didn't know how bad it was, but everyone's out on the street. Everyone's talking to each other. Everyone's meeting each other for the first time, like neighbors meeting neighbors. And it's just, it was really nice to see. And I think it will inform a lot of what we do here and, inspire us going forward. I know it will for me. And yeah, I just wanted to keep it short and really just emphasize that point because I've tried to emphasize it to people on the outside and I'm like, no, really, it was a really, really special thing. And if we can just capture a little bit of that and continue to try to expand on that, and not only here, but, even the rest of the nation, that kind of thing, like it really needs it. That's something that I think, not only this locality, municipality, but whole state, whole country could use a little bit more of.
Great way to bookend
Yeah.
our sharing here. Yeah, I do hope that we can take some of the lessons from this and move forward. I mean, make lemonade out of lemons, Did you guys want to share anything from staff point of view? I know we kind of want to keep things on track here, but I want to give you guys an opportunity to share as well. Or maybe you've just been living too much of it and you're done.
I'll say this. It was the connections that we have to community were critical in getting information out. It was hard. It was hard beyond what I could have ever imagined. And that is what it is. It continues to be hard. It hasn't stopped. We're in recovery, which is kind of, I guess, what I'll be presenting on here in a minute. But those neighborhood connections. I mean, we were literally typing up stuff, printing stuff out, driving it to BPR, driving it to, at one point, LOS, like just trying to get information in the hands of people without being able to communicate with our regular media partners because there was no phone service, right? So it's kind of like, not gets anybody home, like here. And then, yeah, Trey and Christina both, we were able to extend that, like getting all the information, getting it in those one sheets. Then we were really able to like get out. There's a lot of driving around, hand delivering, relying on connections that we had with people. And then just like you guys said, the grassroots, people getting out into their neighborhoods, extending that network so that folks could get information about how to have their basic needs met. So yeah, it was a lot, but that piece of the connection with neighborhoods was critical. It was critical, and people just showed up, and yeah, I think I know that I've a million stories about lives being saved, like neighbors knocking on doors like hadn't seen my neighbor, and then find out like they had like fallen or they were in the bad and they couldn't move, or yeah. So it matters. Those connections in neighborhoods really do matter, and having that connection to the folks that have the job of disseminating information like that's important too, so that we really are all in it together.
I'll just say that you all have said it, and I really appreciate everything that you shared, all the kind words about your neighbors, your community, what city staff was able to do. And nothing that hasn't been said before, but we really saw the value of relationships and connections. And I really do believe that our overall Asheville community is only as strong as those relationships and those connections. We saw that people and relationships are the ultimate resource in a time where everything's uncertain and we don't have communication. We aren't able to go and just use our electronic currency to go and just purchase whatever we want at a tap or whatever we need at a tap. And that was on full display during the storm. We really got to see Boltz's better nature shine through. And I want to thank y'all for everything that you do through this commitment to foster those relationships and continue to make sure that our neighborhoods are healthy in that way. Because that's a part of the resilience we're trying to build as we're looking for the future. So thank you.
I guess I have to now that everybody. So y'all are all so articulate, and I can't say anything any better than anybody has already said it. I am just so deeply appreciative of my colleagues. Like, we have been through so much together over the last year. Obviously, there was like the compressed period of time where we were like buckled down in emergency, and you learn a lot about yourself and about the people around you in times like that. And I've witnessed just the most amazing responses in people, really, really admirable. And everything like Charles, what you shared about Jeremy and all, I feel like all of our colleagues are like that here. And so I can't imagine having gone through this, like working through this in any better environment. And I don't know. That's where my heart is right now. I just feel really appreciative of everybody, people at this table, and people that come in this organization every day. And I want to shout out Dowa because she's an amazing leader, and getting to like the privilege of being able to work with somebody who's like at this phase of her profession and work so closely with you it's been amazing.
Practicing receiving. Back at you.
Well, thank you, everybody. I think there's a long road ahead, but there's great people in all places in the city that, we're going to get through this for sure. So speaking of recovery, Dow is going to share with us about the structure and scope of the 4 recovery boards that City Council established a few meetings ago, as well as the framework for the rest of the advisory boards for the next 2 years. So Dow, take it away.
Ooh, all right. Keep a close eye on time. Bring up the presentation. Okay.
Yeah.
Oh. Sorry. Yeah. And I need to go back to the meeting, and I need to share the presentation that's already up. Oh, and then I need to come here and then slideshow. Yeah. Hey, nice. Okay, and then it'll let me, yes. All right. So here we are, right? We just, well, yeah, that was really stories, and I just feel really grateful to be a civil servant right now, and to have the dedication that you all come to this work with. And it has certainly informed where we are with these temporary Helene recovery boards. So we're going to walk through just what that looks like and what it's going to look like for the next 2 years, because they are temporary. And then just what that means for this advisory board and how that fits into the system. All right, so the council, through a resolution, established 4 temporary Helene recovery boards, and they are oriented around the priorities that council set coming right out of, oh gosh, now I'm losing track of time. Yep, it was
February.
yeah, around February, and then that was based off of input received through the Helene Priority Survey about what was most important, what were the greatest needs right now, is what council wanted to understand. And that's where they came up with these 4 focus areas. So the Helene Recovery Boards reflect those 4 areas, and they will hold regularly scheduled meetings until June 30th of 2027. So that's the 2 years, the temporary nature of them over the next 2 years, so that yes, there are day-to-day operations that are happening to keep the city running, and so much of the attention is really focused and needs to be focused on impacts that our community is feeling in these 4 different areas. So existing advisory boards, NAC, as an example, will continue to provide expertise and support community input, and contribute to policy recommendations on an as-needed basis for those meetings. And we'll talk a little bit more about what that means. If you're curious, this isn't for NAC, but if you're curious, quasi-judicial and technical boards have resumed their regular meeting schedules, and that's so that they can continue to carry out those quasi-judicial functions that they have. So a little bit about, I'm going to start first with the Helene Recovery Board structure. So each will have no more than 11 members, and then up to 7 members will be appointed from existing chairs, vice chairs, or their designees of current advisory boards. So all 4 of those recovery boards have members that are from all of the other advisory boards, so that there's a real comprehensive experience at the table to provide those recommendations for policy decisions for council. And then additionally, 4 to 5 members will be appointed by council from the community at large. And that was because council absolutely felt it was very important to make sure that these boards have diversity within them, and that they represent a number of different experiences across the city, and that those voices are at the table as recommendations are being developed. The work of the 4 Helene Recovery Boards will be supported by staff. And meetings will be streamed online and accessible to the public. So we are at the point where we are going to be able to implement something some of the folks that have been on the committee longer may remember, and that is hybrid meetings for advisory boards. So that means you can be an advisory board member and be there in person, or you could participate remotely. And then the idea there is that we're removing barriers for people to be able to participate. So that's going to be a new thing rolling into this. Everything prior to the first board conference room getting flooded last night. We had just wrapped up that project with the equipment, and it sounds, but no pun intended, like everything's okay down there with the AV equipment. But that's going to be an important part of it. Public could also participate in person or remotely. The meetings will be regularly scheduled, taking some feedback from the realignment working group, if any of you tracked that work over the last few years. And that being, the idea is that we want to learn and make it easier for people to follow what's happening with advisory boards. And right now we all recognize it's a bit of a onerous process, you know, having to go to every different page and open up documents for each page. So we want to take some of those learnings and fold that into how these temporary recovery boards are working. And then this is a really important piece, the work plans, again, so that there's a clear understanding of what the agendas and work will be for these recovery boards. The work will be based on council committee assignments and needs. So every recovery board will be oriented with a city council committee so that council is absolutely hearing what the recovery boards are saying, and there can be easier flow of information between the two. So there was a lot of intention put behind that structure. So here is where the advisory boards are lined up with the 4 different recovery boards. And you can see here that NAC is falling under housing as well as people and environment. And if you're curious about those, we've got some more information about that that's available on the website, where the scopes for each of those are laid out very clearly on the project page. So the Housing Recovery Board scope, they will be providing input to City Council on policy recommendations that advance post-disaster housing stability efforts. That's one. Recommendations that support temporary and permanent housing solutions for displaced residents. And then supporting the development of strategies to proactively address future displacement events. And then just like NAC, the members of this temporary recovery board will be important communication partners to extend the network of information that's getting out there. So you'll see that each of these boards has this last bullet where it clearly says, so that everybody understands that serving, that that part of serving on this board is helping residents navigate post-disaster housing challenges. And that's through communicating resources, programs, et cetera, that are available. And that information will be provided, of course, to the board members, to the people serving on those boards. And that can absolutely be additionally amplified through this advisory board as well. Now, I can go through, I just want to be respectful of our time. You all will have this that you can reflect back on. Mm-hmm. Would it be helpful to go through all 4 or to just focus on housing and people and environment?
I think we can just focus on the two that are relevant for us.
All right, because yeah, the economy gets to be kind of long, and then there's infrastructure, and then people and environment. So the People and Environment Recovery Board will be providing input to City Council on policy recommendations that strengthen the city's ability to prepare for and respond to climate-related disasters. You guys already started doing that today. I thought it went well after the storm. We want to make sure we're capturing that and integrating that into plans moving forward. And then providing input on policy recommendations that support environmental sustainability. And then recognize the impact and role of Asheville's natural resources in recovery. So that's a bit about what people and environment will be doing. And then, of course, that last bullet again, supporting council by consulting existing resources and tools to include known climate vulnerability considerations into policy and programming recommendations. So that is a lot of words. But the essence of that is there's a lot of tools that are out there, including some that the city has developed with public input from our community. But as recommendations are being made, the idea is that those things are being consulted and being brought into the conversation, as well as then extending that information out into the community, because we know the first 72 hours, you might not have easy access to resources. If you know what those are, you and your neighbors can begin to respond in a even more impactful way. All right, so here we are with neighborhood level resilience and preparedness efforts. One of the items on this year's organizational work plan is certainly around emergency preparedness. It's probably no big surprise. Hopefully you've seen the after action review, which is posted on the AshevilleRecovers.org site. So we had the people that came in and helped us develop our emergency operations plan. They came back and did an after action review with us so that we can continually improve, learn from this disaster, be better prepared for other uncomfortable situations we may find ourselves in the future. And then more on the supporting council, right? So we'll be looking for input on what are some ways to support residents recovering from disaster impacts, while at the same time strengthening our long-term community resilience. So those are the kind of conversations that will be shared, and that means a lot of getting out to the community, bringing back what you're hearing, you know, making sure that whoever's assigned from NAC is hearing what you're hearing in neighborhoods to bring that up to the board. And then again, helping residents feel informed, engaged, and connected by sharing information through each member's respective networks. So next steps. That is why we had to get this meeting on the calendar fast and furious, because the representatives to the boards, one will go on people and environment, one will go on housing, need to be to the city clerk's office by the 28th, which is Sunday. And additionally, all current advisory board members are welcome to apply for any of the at-large seats. So that's an option for you, as each of you as well. And then council, the next step, council will be appointing members to the boards on October 14th at their meeting. And then again, those meetings will continue on a regular basis through June 30th, 2027. We're still working out what exactly that schedule is going to look like. We just spent an hour and a half today in a meeting trying to figure that out. But as soon as all of that's firmed up, I mean, the communications will be rolling out quickly here in the next few weeks, just so that we can get everything up and running. So there have been questions like, what is as needed basis? Now we're coming into the part of the presentation that is more oriented towards current advisory boards, so really applicable here to NAC. And so this was the structure that was proposed when council voted to adopt this structure and then passed the resolution that established the 4 temporary. So coming up to that, there are lots of questions. What does on demand mean, right? Or what does as needed mean? And these next 2 slides aim to bring a little more clarity to that. So most of the boards will be meeting when assigned a task. Again, that's so that we've got alignment and that we're focusing all of our attention and resources in the areas that have been defined to be the work program for the next year, and then we'll do the same thing again after council's retreat coming here in February of 2026. So those 13 boards will be including NAC. You may be assigned a task by city council, a council committee, or the department director for the department that supports this committee, this board. And that would be me. So there may be some things that, typically how that works is I work with the chair and the vice chair, talk about what the agenda may be. So if there's something that you all are hearing, right, because you're meeting on an as needed basis, make sure you're getting that information to Elise and Elizabeth. And then that's where it starts to bubble up, and we may have a conversation and they may say, hey, Dalla, like this thing's bubbling up. We'll have a conversation. I myself need to check in and make sure that we've got support from council to generate another meeting, or that it's aligned with our work plan. I feel confident that we will be able to do that. And then there may be things that come from the council committee where they're assigning and they're saying, you know what, the people in environment, they're working on this thing, and they'd really like for the neighborhood advisory committee to look into X, Y, and Z a little bit more. And that would be another way that a meeting would be scheduled in that as needed category. So that was the top down. So the system, the city council, council committee, and then if there's anything from a department director level, those conversations will be had and meetings can be scheduled. And let me just say this, it's not because anybody thinks that it's not worthwhile to have advisory boards. I want to be very clear about that. I will say from the seat that I sit in that it is a valued resource. And with everything that we have coming at us in the short amount of time we have to make decisions to get the funding that we need to execute the projects that we want to do, efficiency is really going to become important. And then if we can really have everybody's attention focused on projects that have been approved, vetted by council, then we have more perspectives around the table, because we're not spreading all of the expertise of all these advisory boards in so many different areas. So just a little disclaimer on that a little bit of the why, and time. Certainly staff time is a component of that. And another really important component of that is the alignment piece, right? Because when the work's not aligned, then staff is taken away from things that are in the work plan, and things move a little slower sometimes, just to be frank. All right, so that was the kind of like top down, like the structure, into the advisory boards. And there are other ways. So how do individuals, right? Like, what if you have a good idea? Like, we get a fabulous idea. How do you get that into the system to be considered? So here are some pathways to do that. So first, you could ask whoever's going to be assigned to the boards to share that point of view, bring that topic up in the recovery board setting. That's one way. We talked about that a little bit. You could also communicate that idea to a council committee, right? There's always public comment during council committee meetings, and so there's the opportunity to do that. And then you can always communicate it to council as well. All their emails are there on the website, and lots of people do. So don't think that's a far out thing. Plenty of people share their ideas and thoughts with city council. And my observation has been is that they really, they listen, they take into account what's coming across their desk in that way. And then the fourth way is to ask in this case, so to ask Elise as the board chair to present the idea to me. And then we can again have that conversation. What does our bandwidth look like? What does the meeting schedule look like? How might we be able to make a meeting happen to address that topic? All right.
I have a question about that. So the way it has worked up till this point is we really couldn't have a lot of discussion over email without meeting because there was the public input, public information. If the committee or if NAC wanted to discuss an idea before we wanted to bring it through, at least to you, are any of those types of rules being suspended or looked at differently? If we're not meeting, we still can't talk about it.
Right, yeah, so you would have to have less than a quorum. I mean, you can absolutely pick up the phone and call each other. If we
Okay.
have less than absolutely, and it's always been like that.
Okay.
Right, and you can absolutely, if it's less than a quorum, like you can have a cup of coffee and have a conversation. The problem is the challenge becomes if you have a quorum and you're meeting to talk about city business, just to put it in plain language. I mean, Brad would, our city attorney would,
Yeah.
there are a lot more words, technical terms that could go with that, and Brad is brilliant. But I think just in plain language, things to keep in mind are quorum, and are you talking about city business, right? Like if a quorum of you went out to go hear some music, right, that's probably not gonna be a problem. But if you're talking about something that could even be perceived as city business, I don't know, I would err on the side of being cautious. So, but you can pick up the phone and call each other. You absolutely can.
Well, that's kind of what I'm wondering, because the way that it's structured now, if we're not really meeting regularly, but we can bring ideas, how do we even get together and coalesce with an idea? So I just want to make sure that I understand that.
Yeah, just what the guardrails
Yeah.
are.
Yeah.
Yep, and that's why you have a board chair, right? Because, you know, if like at least might be like, oh, 3 people called me and said, kind of think and feel like this, but see, they're not deliberating.
Right.
That's
We're not
the
making
difference,
decisions or anything.
right?
Yeah.
And so then the deliberation is where that would need to be out open in the public. And then a meeting perhaps could be scheduled if everybody agrees that it's all aligned with the council committee work plans and our organizational work plan. Now I'm saying lots of words, but there's lots of hands. Does that make sense? I feel like that's been foggy.
I guess it kind of is, you know, how we have those subcommittees, right? And none of them, because like for that reason, we can have, obviously there's a lot fewer of us now, so it doesn't take much quorum, but I think for the subcommittees, as long as there was like 3 or fewer, right, NAC members on them, that we could like email each other endlessly and meet however many times we wanted to. So I guess it would have to, it'd be the same thing. It's just, I think, for
The numbers that we're at
Yeah.
now, 3 is quorum.
Yeah, 3 is
so
quorum, so
we can only have
two-
two.
you only have 2 at a time,
Yeah.
basically.
And things will change as new members come on
Right.
board. And again, this is temporary. You want to learn what we can from the structure. So when we're out of this at the end of the 2 years, what lessons are learned? And one of those things I can tell you is improved communication, right? So it's easier to track and see what's happening in all of these boards and stay plugged in, right? Because that's probably a way that you might pick up the phone and say, hey, you know, I watched this recovery board, Elise, and here's an idea. Or whoever is assigned to the, I don't want to, that's coming, whoever's going to be assigned to each of the boards. Just using Elise as a placeholder as the board chair right now for that concept. So that make sense? Any other, I can do my best to answer. I've been
I do have a question about, Maura spoke to it a little bit about the subcommittees, and then, you know, we left last time, and as I recall, disappointed that they canceled the thing at the
Yeah.
yeah, and then, but the festival, and we were going to come up with our goals, I guess in the October meeting, which didn't happen for other reasons. Are we? I do wonder about that. You know, that festival neighborhood was a actual physical manifestation of work that goes on. How does that fall? How does that fall into this new structure? I mean, is someone else going to pick that up, or are we just going to let that fall?
See, it's a good example. And the answer right now today is don't know.
Okay.
And that's because it would likely come out of a conversation at a recovery board, because it takes staff time, it takes staff resources, it takes a lot of your time. And so that perhaps it's a good example, right? That might be something whoever's the representative of people and environment from that would want to say, hey, we had this neighborhood festival. It really did bring people together. That might be something worth exploring again. Perhaps.
Okay.
Perhaps if that's something that, yeah.
For
but
now,
we
it's
have-
off the table,
Okay.
just because the resources are where they are, but certainly it would be nice in the future to get back to that, and maybe it morphs into something different where it becomes part of the, because we were doing it in
Emergency
September.
preparedness.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it becomes this like Helene remembrance memorial thing every year. I don't know, I'm just making stuff up right now, but
I just think it's kind of an irony of it is like it was a means to bring neighborhoods together. We saw neighborhoods come together individually, throughout, and not trying to be too poetic, but just kind of it could be that festival of neighborhoods could be something to that effect.
Well, it might inform, I think, what we would do in the future if there was an activity that, or an event that did align within the council goals and the overall structure and brought forward to, because there's everything that everybody shared really brought home why we have this committee in the first place, right? We saw it all around us, and it's like, that's what we want to capture. That's what we hoped for something like that event, but maybe there's something broader or a collaborative effort that would fall under the priorities at some point, not now, but at some point. Yeah.
are there any other questions before we talk about our designees?
So, okay, just a quick question. So, these new committees essentially, is that kind of what they're called? Committees.
The Helene Recovery Board.
Okay, yes.
Because it starts to get confusing because there's council committees and there's full council,
Right.
but yeah.
Okay, yeah, it's okay,
It's a
yeah.
lot.
So those, and so we're going to be appointed from this committee, two members. Okay, but they're not like, this isn't going away. It's just going to be a separate thing alongside
Right.
this committee as well.
We probably won't, we're definitely not going to meet monthly.
Right.
That's for sure.
Okay.
It is on a technically an as needed
Right.
basis, but I know Dalla and I have had communications with each other where we do want to meet as our NAT group,
Mhm.
whether that's quarterly or every other month, right? We don't know yet, but we will still have some meetings between now and June 30th, 2027. I promise
Yes.
you, we will. But it's the recovery boards that will be meeting like every month or every other month.
Okay.
And is this, I'm kind of conceptualizing it like another filter between city council and the other committees, I mean, NAC and all the other boards and commissions. Is it another more focused funnel? Maybe filter is not the right word, funnel for that.
Yeah,
In between
funnel.
step.
Yeah, I think I'm tracking with the funnel imagery. The difference here and the thing that could potentially help with efficiency is that there are representatives from a number of different advisory boards. So what's going to council has had a first layer of conversation from a number of points of view, right? Instead of it's just one advisory board that is focused on the neighborhoods and one that's focused on urban forests and another one that's focused on, the civic center, right? All having their things and having conversations in a concentrated way.
There'll be at least up to 7 members of that Helene Recovery Board will be from one of the regular advisory boards. So you're basically, getting a brain trust together of, as many as 7 different committees plus, 3 or 4 other community members as well. So collaborative space. So we have 2, I don't know if we technically can call them appointments or just designees is the right term. But so we have open positions on the Housing Recovery Board and the People and Environment Recovery Board. And kind of the default for filling those positions, the intention was to have chair and vice chair do that. I did want us to get together and have a discussion about that and not just assume. But Elizabeth did say that she was interested in the People and Environment Recovery Board, and I have interest for the Housing Recovery Board. Does anyone else have any interest? Like, please step forward if you have interest in serving on either of those boards.
When do they meet?
Don't know
That's right. That's right.
We don't
Okay,
know
that's
yet.
right.
Yeah.
Sorry. I'm like thinking my schedule. Yeah, the housing,
Yeah, housing.
Yeah.
Too, if that were, but
but I could be in either one.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I mean, I would be interested as
Yeah.
well, but I was thinking maybe, I mean, I was probably just gonna apply separately as well, right?
oh, that's true.
Right, because I mean, it's, I don't know, maybe the appointments are people going, you know, they're selling out, but I mean, I'm guessing there's a high chance that if we apply for either of those boards or other boards, excuse me, yeah, recovery boards, we have a pretty decent shot of maybe getting on one. You know, my point being,
I anticipate there will be a lot of applicants
Yeah.
for those positions. Or maybe it just seems that way to me because I know that it's happening and maybe like 95% of the rest of the city doesn't know that that's happening. But I know in my circles, I know a lot of people who are interested.
Well, and we wouldn't be limited, like if we wanted to apply as an at-large, we can apply for any of the boards.
Absolutely,
Okay,
any of the
so we
boards.
wouldn't be limited to the Housing and People and Environment.
So there's 44 slots, really, 4 recovery boards, 11 people.
there's
Well,
16
the
to
at-large, I think
20
it's like
that are
4
at
to 5.
large.
Yeah, it's like 4 to 5 are
4 to 5
at-large.
times 5.
So anywhere from 20 to
16 to 20.
16 to 20, yeah.
Yeah.
So I mean, I don't have a strong case for why it shouldn't be y'all, if you're willing to commit to it. But if you're not, or if you think you have thoughts that you don't want to spend the effort or whatever, I'd love to step in, or I'm sure you guys would too. So
Yeah,
I'm sure it
I don't-
could be. I mean, if this is going to go on for as long as it does, it could be that a year from now we rotate even, or have like some alternates if like one of us can't make a meeting.
Those are the kinds of things that we definitely want to
Yeah, I was
take
gonna say, I
back.
think maybe an
instead.
alternate would be a good idea. So if for whatever reason, either you or Elizabeth can't make something, you know, I don't know if that's something we have to decide. I guess we do have to decide
That's what I was
today,
thinking
right?
of too. Is
Yeah.
Well, we can come back, because I'd hate for you guys to, I feel like that is one that I would want to just check in with the city attorney, city clerk, you know, all of those that are setting the system up to make sure that makes a lot of sense. This is the kind of feedback that is going to be so
'Cause there's gonna
helpful.
be-
It's very practical.
Yeah,
There's gonna be
right?
times when a meeting comes up and someone says, I'm out of town or I can't do that.
Right, right,
Especially
right.
if it's gonna go on for as long. as-
yeah, are we
Can I just
representing?
say how cool it is that every member of our committee wants to be in
Yeah.
one of these? I just,
Well, I think that's kind of an interesting, maybe to always bring it back. I mean, are we representing the NAC? Or are we representing ourselves as an individual? Because if we're representing NAC, then in my mind, philosophically, you should have an alternate, right? So that NAC is represented at that
Yeah.
meeting,
Absolutely.
right? If
Yeah.
someone can't make it. So that's kind of logically that flows in my mind now. I don't know what the laws and
And
other
it
things
could be
are.
fluid, so it's like maybe one of us three could always fill in if you guys needed us to. And so it wouldn't just be like, for instance, a designated person, because if that person also can't make it, then, you know, that makes sense to me, especially if you guys are gonna be meeting as regularly as you anticipate for as long.
Yeah, it would be good to know from the clerk and council's perspective if they see any type of alternate or like those proxy type situation.
Absolutely. I've got that.
Is it an anthology series where it's new characters in the murder mystery every time, or is there continuity?
Yeah.
Because it could make sense too, if even if we are representing that, if you've gone to 5 meetings and I show up at 6, I'm like, who's this guy? You know,
yeah.
If we do intend to have something like that, it would be good for everyone to stay up to date on
Right.
what's
Yes,
happening,
correct.
which is kind of our next discussion after we select who's going to be those designees, I also want us to talk about, what are those expectations around sharing the information back? Are we just going to rely on everyone watching the YouTube videos and keeping themselves informed, or is there any type of like reporting structure that we're hoping to get? But I think first we should make our designations. So I will make a motion to designate Elizabeth as our representative on people and environment.
Second.
Any discussion?
Yep.
All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay.
Thanks.
Are there any nominations for housing?
I'll nominate Elise.
Yeah.
Thank you. Is there a second? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay. I hope you don't think that we were just
Oh,
like
no.
going through the motions or
Not at
anything.
all.
I did.
Well, I mean, you guys obviously stepped up to be, he did.
Oh, yeah.
You both stepped up to be chair and vice chair last time, right? You actually just became official chair at the last meeting.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah, that's true.
Uh,
That's true.
I mean, I think it only makes sense for you to carry that on as kind of the leader and vice leader. So I don't feel like it was forced through, I guess.
So knowing who our representatives are, what kind of reporting back would you like to get in your ideal world?
Can I ask a question to the council representative, to the city representatives before that? What can they, is there a limit on what can be shared back to us? I guess if it's in BCC form, there's no limit, right?
Yeah, so we could talk, what would be helpful from a staff perspective is just say there were no limitations, what would be helpful to you?
Okay.
Because we are
Got it,
trying to
okay.
design, is it subscriber lists, or how can we keep everybody, in addition, I mean, even outside of this, the idea is to keep everybody that wants to be informed.
Well, there's going to be minutes, right? That can be shared with, I mean, I would prefer to get minutes of the meeting,
Yeah.
to not have
Maybe
to
even
watch
start
it.
with an agenda so you know
Yeah.
what's coming out. Right.
And then, but that can be sent from to all, I'm not making y'all, I'm not saying this is what y'all are gonna do, but y'all could send that to everyone who's already on a advisory board, right? As a matter of course, and then from an ask of Elise or Elizabeth would be maybe a follow-up email with, hey, in addition to that, here's 3 things I heard that maybe didn't come out or
Yeah.
whatever, but to get your perspective, because the official minutes, not that they're wrong, it's just,
It's
They're
not gonna
action
be-
minutes.
it's
They're
not just-
action minutes. I mean,
Yeah.
so they're not.
They're just like timestamps.
Yeah.
You
Okay.
can go and listen to it.
Yeah, so they're not going to be as like specific necessarily to the neighborhood advisory committee and or maybe like action oriented for what we could do as a committee. So if that's not obviously too much of an imposition, I think at minimum,
Yeah.
I agree, like agenda prior, which could be sent, to anybody, and then of course the minutes, and then anything that you guys hear that is, you think, pertinent to what we do as a committee would just be highlighted. And it doesn't have to be anything formal. Just say, these are the 2 things that stood out.
and I will say, Maura, just to tack on to your, not to make it an imposition, I'm the worst note taker, I'm the worst follow-up person, blah, 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 like in my own personal affairs, right? So like, if y'all don't send me an email, I'm not gonna be like offended. If I missed, you know what I'm saying? Like, don't feel like that's an obligation. At least that's my take on it. I don't know. Just because I know people get busy and there's a lot going on.
Mhm. Does the city plan, like, I know there's so many lists, like notification lists that you can be just subscribed to. And I feel like I'm on some of them and not on
Their
others.
faces, they're all like.
I wish there was just one master one that's like,
Right.
send me everything city related. But I probably would regret that actually. But
Or not.
but like for each of the 4 recovery boards, will there be like I want to subscribe to housing and send me all the housing stuff. I
I
want to
think that's
subscribe.
probable, and that's why this is a fascinating conversation. And we've not made a decision,
Mhm.
but we certainly have that capability. There is a project page for Helene Recovery Boards. If you haven't seen it yet, that's a good page to visit. And
You can probably subscribe to updates there.
You can, you can, but yes, I mean, I think we could figure out that, I'm imagining that that is part of the work that we'll be doing
Mhm.
here in the future. How can we keep people better informed and have it be as efficient and effective as possible?
So
But-
it's- go ahead.
I was just gonna say, will there be a way for any Asheville city resident to say, I want to subscribe to this recovery board, blah, 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 or this recovery board? So that we could, is that what you're saying? We could designate those?
I don't want to promise because
Okay.
it will be a team decision. There is a capability to be able to do something like that. And it's on the technical end where we need to work between the structure that is on the website, the structure that is within public input, which is designed, right, with all those customer relation modules, all the things you can subscribe to, and then you get the things that are really interesting to you. So we're exploring. Is there a way that we can make this easier and efficient to people with boards and commissions are getting the things that they want? And I think we will find something that will be better. I can say that for sure.
So I don't know if you guys are already using this or have thought about this, but with meetings like Google Meet and Slack and stuff like that, AI is becoming integrated with those platforms. And so you can just,
There's
okay, there's problems. Okay, I was wondering.
With the
Yeah.
note summary.
Like AI
well,
notes, right?
well, and then just AI in general and policy and da 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 da.
Yeah.
But back to efficiency. I am interested in whatever we can do
Yeah.
that is, that aligns with policy that can make things easier
Yeah,
for sure.
speaking purely note taking,
Yeah.
like nothing. I know
Yeah.
people get weird about AI, but nothing. We're not making art or anything. Just just
yeah.
like
Yeah.
yeah. Just
There's
notes.
definitely
Yeah.
a way to, if you wanted to use it personally, for you guys to be able to synthesize information. If there's like a recorded call, like, of course, the meetings are going to be recorded and or live streamed, and you could use it on, not in the official city capacity, but as a way to kind of, again, synthesize the information. So maybe it's easier to summarize in an email that you're sending out to people, but the AI summary is not like the official,
Yeah.
thing that you're sending out.
I had someone's AI note taker show up to a conference call the other day and he did. So.
We were like
Policy.
booted.
Yeah. So it sounds like there will likely be some type of way for anyone to sort of subscribe to at least get those agenda links and meeting notices and that kind of stuff. It sounds like that'll be there.
Probable.
If it's not, we can certainly forward that along. But I think what I'm hearing might be the most helpful is for us to, come up with those bullet points highlighting just what is really, NAC specific item of interest. And if there's anything that comes up for discussion where, seek feedback where it seems relevant to seek feedback on that kind of stuff.
And that will, you and I can be in more consistent contact too about when we're going to these and what's relevant to share, and do we have any feedback from people about what to do next.
Sounds good, and it can, evolve as we go along. So, all right, great. I told you we were going to end at 7:15.
You did, and I looked at the clock and it was 7:15.
7:25.
The clock's a little fast. I have one thing to ask though, with the open 4 vacant seats that we have. Are we actively recruiting for that? And if so, is that, what, do we have a position on that?
The clerk's office is advertising for any vacancies on like the standing boards at the same time that they're advertising for recovery boards. So it might be the kind of thing where there's less people are paying attention to like us right now. Also because maybe they don't want to sign up for a board when they don't think they're going to meet for a year and a half. Like I can definitely see that happening too.
I wonder if we can, I mean, not formally, but I'm thinking of in terms of taking people that applied for some of these, the recovery boards that are not assigned by city council to then say, funnel them to the existing vacancies and say, it sounds like you might have some interest in this area, and we might be able to get some interest in that way.
Yeah, especially if they're assigned to either the housing or the people on environment recovery boards, because it's like, hey, these are the advisory boards that fall under those boards that have vacancies if you're interested.
Right.
Because it touches on some of the same stuff.
Get involved that way. I do know that the clerk's office had been in communication with me several times, like since we met a year ago, saying like, oh yeah, city council's gonna make appointments. Here are some applications for you to review and like provide any feedback. And I think one time I was like, we're not meeting. I'm not going to provide any feedback right now. But back in April, it sounded like they were actually going to make appointments. So then I did provide some feedback, but then they didn't make appointments. So I did reach out to the clerk's office and say, you know, if we get any new ones in, I'd like to look them over.
I was going to say, is that something I can be involved with?
Yeah, definitely.
I was actually, so I filled out that form about extending my term, but then I saw that it was, like you had mentioned, that it was also currently being advertised for. So I don't know if there's, because I was like, well, maybe I didn't submit it, but then I tried resubmitting it and it said, you've already submitted this form. So I know I've submitted it.
I asked Noah to follow up on that because I saw that they were advertising for your seat, and I'm like, no. Lauren wants to extend her term. So we'll make sure that no one saves over your term.
No, you had. I said, oh, I didn't realize. So I checked, and I was like, well, maybe I thought I filled it out because I was convinced I had, and I didn't. Or maybe I didn't submit it, so I tried refilling it out again, and then of course I used the same email address. And when I submitted it, it said, hey, sorry, you've already submitted it, so you can't submit it again. So I just wanted to confirm.
We'll get it straightened out.
What's the technical, is there a technical limit on, you can serve twice, right? Is that, or is there not even, I can't,
Well,
am I making it
so
up?
all the people whose terms would have expired like last year or this upcoming
This
year,
upcoming summer, which
they
is mine was.
offered people the chance to extend their term by a year.
I
So
got
like
it, okay.
Elizabeth and I should have rolled off at the end of June, but like we didn't get our last year. So
Mhm.
they're letting us extend our term for a year. But you, under normal circumstances, you are allowed to serve for up to 2 full terms.
Okay,
So like if you take on someone's unexpired term and then you get reappointed, that's still just your first term.
okay.
It's 2 like terms.
Got it.
That's what happened to me when I came in on 2021. But then I was filling out somebody else's. And so from 22 to 25 was supposed to be 3 years. So technically I could serve 7 because I started it.
Yeah,
Filling
I was filling in for when I came. It was
It's like being president.
April. April 2023. So I was taking over something. So technically, my term expired June 2025. It was. I think the person had been there a year when I took their spot, and then so technically I could go another year after this passed. After the additional year.
Right. I think normally we have 9 people and they tried to stagger them. So it's like 3 this year, 3 next year, 3 the year after that.
So it's not like 7 people roll off.
Okay, so we don't have any agenda items for our upcoming meetings because we're just living day by day right now.
Am I allowed to present an idea live here, or is it too early for that? Because I do think revisiting as a special meeting, the Festival of Neighborhoods, as something for us to take on going forward. Now, maybe that needs to wait until the other advisory boards kick off, but I'd like to just present, like, that was something we were passionate about. We were disappointed we couldn't have it. It kind of got canceled for like a little bit of rain. And then, we had a lot of rain.
A lot of bit of rain, yep.
But I would just, I just think that would be something cool that I think I would suggest we work on an as needed basis, right? To try to keep that going. Now, maybe we present a new format or whatever, but I would love for that to be something that we get to keep working on. And so I don't know if I can present that now or how we should present things for as needed going forward, but that would be something I'd love to revisit.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think, and I know Elizabeth and Laura put so much work into that. I'm sure you guys would like to revisit that at some point too.
I think when the dust settles and we see what the priorities are and we figure out, I think it's worth noting that we do want to come back to this. We just don't know.
Yeah. And it does require a lot of meetings outside of whatever.
Yeah, and
meeting.
I wasn't in those, so you guys.
Yeah, no, I mean, it's for it to, for it to really, for you to really accomplish what needs to be accomplished for all the logistics and everything, you definitely have to meet fairly often, especially as it gets closer.
Right.
So it would be beyond like the monthly. Yeah. Mhm.
And to be open to what other types of neighborhood building community events we could do that might be not as labor
Involved.
intensive.
Yeah,
But it
not
still
as
fits
not as
the objective.
Yeah, not as logistically, because I mean that required a lot, not just our resources, but obviously city's task is, everybody had to be there, and then it also required volunteers. So, and the number of volunteers depends on like how much each volunteer contributes. So we had some very, very active volunteers that if they weren't as active, we probably would have needed more. Just thinking about it. So.
And it might take on a whole, we're calling it the Festival of Neighborhoods, but maybe we just erase that from our minds and talk about some type of gathering of neighborhoods. And maybe it's not this festival thing, maybe it's an emergency preparedness workshop or,
like a smaller scale.
Yeah. It could take on a whole new, audience and purpose, but it's still in some ways bringing neighborhoods together. I think, once Elizabeth starts meeting with the people in Environment Recovery Board and kind of shares that we had this idea, then maybe they can also provide some feedback about how we can use that opportunity to bring people together.
Yeah, and then there would be the assignment, right? Yes, need to take those, but NAC would meet again to explore whatever ideas might come out of people environment. In this example, right, that would have had even more input from different perspectives, right? Because then you have emergency management perhaps in there, and it could just be a richer conversation.
Well, Councilmember Rooney's here. Did you want to share anything?
We already talked about the Heroes of the Link.
Oh
no.
we
I can
didn't.
share it.
Not.
So we're coming up on the 1-year anniversary of Hurricane Helene. And there's a lot of ways to gather in the community and heal and remember together. I know for some people, they're wanting to be more in a private family space. So I'm just encouraging folks to check in on your neighbors, just like we did a year ago. But if you're looking for a way to connect in community, the Heroes of Helene event is Thursday from 4 to 7 p.m. at Highland Brewing. If you search Heroes of Helene on Google, it takes you to the website for the Asheville Chamber. It's free, but they are asking for folks to register. So it takes about maybe 3 minutes to register online. But for those of you who are wanting to be in community, we'll see you there.
And then the milestone breakfast for those that work here, milestone breakfast on Sunday,
Saturday at 8:30.
Saturday, 8:30 to 9:30. And you can just go to ashevillerecovers.org. And then there are other events that are listed as well. You can RSVP, and we're tracking the RSVP list, and there's definitely still space for community members.
Oh, and it's Pride this weekend. So
Yes.
that's Friday night and Saturday.
A lot
of ways to connect.
When was the Heroes?
4 to 7 p.m. on Thursday at Highland Brewing.
Oh, that's September. This
25th.
Thursday.
Correct.
Are there flyers for that somewhere that we could
I haven't seen
literally put in people's mail?
that. Right. It would be great if you have somebody who has a neighborhood newsletter to send it to them, so that we can get the word out, especially because there's still COVID.
And where's the milestone breakfast?
At My Daddy Taught Me That.
That's right.
Place on Hunt Hill.
Okay. Awesome. Well, we don't have any specific agenda items for upcoming meetings. And as far as the next regular meeting, advisory boards will meet on demand through June 30th of 2027 as tasks are assigned by City Council, council committees, or other departments. we do anticipate that we may have a meeting in November to onboard our new members. So the 24th would be our regular meeting date, but that is the week of Thanksgiving. So I don't know if that affects anyone's schedules. We could do November 17th, but I'm open to either date.
That would be
Probably better for the 17th.
Yeah.
Next week, for sure.
And are we setting in stone that we're having that meeting, or like we're gonna?
But
Wait
you and
and
I,
see.
yeah, you and I can talk, so I'll need to check calendars and the room
Yeah.
available and make sure as we're getting into this new rhythm that we should consider.
Yeah,
Being good team
pencil
members.
that in.
And that's assuming there's 4 new members or.
At least one new member, right? That's because we don't have to have all 4 to be able to have that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, and when I provided feedback on applications back in April, we had 3 vacancies and there were more than 3 applicants. And
Okay.
those applicants are still, I think your applications are valid for like a year. So
Okay.
assuming those people haven't changed, you know, whether or not they want to participate or not, I am predicting that there will be applicants to fill the positions. If you guys know anybody.
We need to drive the number up for quorum purposes.
So if you know anybody who resides in 2804 or 2805, or there's also 2 positions for just at-large representation, you know, please encourage them to apply. That application deadline is this Sunday. So you don't have too much time. But yeah, certainly it's nice to have a large applicant pool so we can, you know, try to round out our group and make sure that we have diverse enough voices on our board.
If you want, you've still got names from before and you want to send some to me and reach out and see, are you still, do they don't have to reapply? They've already
I
applied in
don't think
2025.
so. I'll have to see. I know they always post all the applications when it goes to council for a vote. I guess I'd have to reach out to the clerk's office to see if I'm able to share that.
Yeah, I would check.
Oh, okay. But just meant applications for people.
Oh, you mean is that the application?
Any applicants that wanted to be on it from before that, I don't know, I guess if everything was on hold, there weren't any decisions made, right?
Right.
Okay.
I'll dig up that email and find those links to this application. All right. Is there a motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn.
Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All right, let's go. Thanks, guys.
Yeah, see you.
So good to see
Well, I just
all
wanted
of
to
you.
give my